learning how to introduce ourselves in Deutsch. Self-introduction in Deutsch is called as sich vorstellen. A lot of times you are in situations, let's say you are at an interview, you are in an exam, or in general if you meet somebody new, they often expect you to introduce yourself, especially when you are in Germany and you say that yes, you are learning the language. They expect your introduction to be in the same language. So we have some key pointers on which you can introduce yourself, either in the form of a question or an answer, or plainly in the form of statements. There are some basic pointers based on which you can introduce yourself in the form of a question and an answer. That is, if somebody asks you a question, you can respond to it. A lot of times the self-introduction is directly in the form of statements where somebody asks you to introduce yourself and one by one you just give your introduction. So we will start with the first point, which is pretty basic, pretty self-explanatory, that is your name. In any introduction, the first place will be always taken by your name. If you see, the spelling does look similar to what we have in English, but the pronunciation here is going to be different. In Deutsch, we pronounce this as Name. Okay? So your name is called Name. So this is the first point of introduction that we have, where we will be learning how to ask somebody their name in the form of a question and how to respond if we get to ask that question. So the first variation that we do here is the formal variation, is wie ist Ihr Name? Okay. So this is a formal variation in which you ask somebody their name. If you notice, I have written this N in capital. Another thing you need to know about German nouns is that the first letter of every noun in German is always written in capitals. So we do not write the name in small letters. The first letter will stay capital regardless of where it comes in a statement or in a question. It could be right at the beginning, right at the end, in the middle, it doesn't matter. It is always going to be capital. So this is a formal variation, a formal question. Okay, if you remember, we've already spoken about formal and informal conversations. So this is a formal question if you're asking somebody in a very official setup. Wie ist Ihr Name? The answer to that becomes Mein Name ist, and it can be followed by your name. So for example, let's take the name Anna over here. Okay, so if I am talking to a colleague, I ask the question, Wie ist Ihr Name? To which I get a response, Mein Name ist Anna. Okay, I'll repeat this once more. Wie ist Ihr Name? Mein Name ist Anna. The informal way of asking this same question is Wie ist dein Name? Okay, Wie ist dein Name? The response remains the same. That is, Mein Name ist Anna. So every question you have, there are always going to be two ways to ask. One formal, one informal. So this is Wie ist dein Name? Mein Name ist Anna. This is just one way of asking somebody their name. We have one more example or one more way in which we can ask somebody their name. Let's take a look at that. Okay. So the question is, wie heißen Sie? So if you look at the Z, this Z is the formal Z, the capital Z, which we have been using. Wie heißen Sie? Heißen is to be. So wie heißen Sie? The answer to that becomes, Ich heiße Anna. You can also use the verb sein here and say Ich bin Okay. So wie heißen Sie? This is the formal question. We have an informal variation of it too, which becomes wie heißt du? Ich heiße Anna. So these are the two questions with which you can ask somebody their name and also respond in this manner if you are asked these questions. So the next point of introduction that we have is Alter, which means age. So in the second introduction point, you are expected to be asked your age and respond to the same question. Okay. So again, we will have two variations here, one formal, one informal. So the formal question is wie alt sind Sie? The same question can be asked informally in the form of wie alt bist du? This basically means how old you are. So you're asking this question formally as well as informally. The answer to that becomes ich bin, whatever your age is. So let's say you're 25 years of age. You will say ich bin 25 Jahre alt. That is, you are 25 years old. So when we write numbers, we can write it in the numerical forms. We do not need it in words. But when we speak it out, it is going to be 25. Like we had learned, the number goes backwards like this. So wie alt sind Sie or wie alt bist du? Ich bin 25 Jahre alt. This is your second point of introduction. Our third point of introduction is land, which means country. So what you're trying to ask the person here is what is their country of origin or where do they come from. So when you are in Germany, you are often asked this question to just know which country you come from. So country in Deutsch is called as Land. The question that we have here is woher kommen Sie? If you see, the verb that we are using here is kommen, which we have previously seen. That is, kommen is to come. So you are asking here woher kommen Sie, as in where do you come from. So this is your formal question. Your informal question here becomes woher kommst du? You're keeping the verb the same, but you are conjugating it according to formal and informal. So woher kommen Sie? Woher kommst du? If you come from India, let's just say your country of origin is India. So we say, so if your country of origin is India, we will say ich komme aus Indien. So the country India in German is called as Indian. This does not mean I'm saying a nationality here. The country itself is called as Indian. So we say Germany in English, but in German we say Deutschland. Similarly, we say India in English, but in Deutsch, in German, we will say Indian. So the question is woher kommen Sie? This is your formal question. Or woher kommst du? This is your informal question. The response to that becomes ich komme aus Indien. Okay. The next pointer to our introduction is Wohnort, which means the place where you live. So the question will be wo wohnen Sie? Now this is a new verb that we see here. The verb is wohnen. So the question we have here is wo wohnen Sie? If you look at the verb wohnen, wohnen means to live. And if you look at the pronunciation of it, this ha is pronounced very subtly. So whenever you have the sound of ha in Deutsch, the pronunciation is very subtler. We do not stress on that ha a whole lot. So it shouldn't sound like wohnen. It sounds like wohnen. It's subtle, it's smooth. So wo wohnen Sie? It's a regular verb, so it can be conjugated like the rest of the regular verbs that we have learned. The informal question therefore becomes wo wohnst du? So the question is wo wohnen Sie or wo wohnst du? The answer to that becomes ich wohne in Dresden. Okay, so here you can use the name of any city that you live in. The question will remain the same. This is wo wohnen Sie, formal. Informal is wo wohnst du. The response to that becomes ich wohne in Dresden.